Hi. Um, I'm gonna give this a shot, but I don't promise it's gonna go well. I'm having some contemplations about the idea or the perception or the concept of non-duality in teachers whom I met on the path. And firstly, I want to say that everything I'm saying here is not only it's not set in stone, but it's not set in stone for me. I'm just in the process of contemplating it. So that's my first disclaimer. I might think completely otherwise later on, and I might even take down this video on a later date when I think differently. And still, I feel this urgency to do this for some reason. And because not everything that I do, has to be rational. Sometimes I just go with impulses or intuitions. So that's why I'm still doing it. The second thing is, given that I'm still thinking about all this stuff, I hope I won't be too contemplative and too slow for you. I might be, so I'm going to try and put my thoughts into words swiftly, but if I won't succeed, I'm sorry. So I'm going to try and talk about at least two teachers that have been pivotal in my personal path, maybe three even. One of them is Tony Parsons, which is, oh, he won't admit he's a teacher or a non-dual teacher, but he is a non-duality teacher. He's not a spiritual teacher, and he is. He's a kind of signpost, spiritual signpost, he would say, I think. Another one is my current influence, which is Thomas Keating, or the way that he's called in Christian circles, Friar or Father Thomas Keating. And there's a third one, which is Joel Goldsmith, which I might pick up as well to comment on. I don't know. So first, I want to say, what is my story? Why am I talking about these people? Well, I don't have any authority on the matter. I'm not, don't consider myself to be anything like enlightened. I don't consider myself to be fully spiritually developed. The only thing is I have personal bone in the mix. I've been a spiritual, not seeker. I don't think I'm seeking anything. I'm just exploring. I did seek for a while, or for some periods. I felt very much a seeker, but mainly it was an exploration, and it was happening all the way from my early 20s till today, which is I'm currently 53. And one of my very first influences was Tony Parsons. And then I dropped off of him because I got frustrated, and I went on my exploration. And currently, in the last about 2.5 years, I met the kind of lineage of Thomas Keating, which led me to him. And I really found myself, because I didn't plan it, there were many things in the middle, and my path was very much integrative. I was influenced from a wide array of teachers and systems, also systems that focus on the body and embodiment and cultivation of intuition and really including the body, like human design, like Gene Keys later on. All are very dear and near influences which I value very much and which contributed to my own transformation. And then I came to where I am now, which is pretty much influenced by Thomas Keating and a wonderful community that really suits me like a glove, the European Centering Prayer online community. And naturally, because there's this suitability, I get influence from that lineage. And just briefly before, I think before I came to know about Thomas Keating, or maybe briefly after I knew about him, I came across Joel Goldsmith and his talks and some of his books, and maybe I would like to say something about that as well. So that is my personal bone to pick about those people. And I want to say some words about the difference. I want to like polarize between Tony Parsons and Thomas Keating mainly, and see point to the difference for me between them. It's very, very hard to talk about Tony Parsons. I think the way that he expresses himself makes sure of that. It's close to impossible to talk about him because he is sitting on a kind of a linguistic loophole that is uncrackable, it's unbreakable, and it makes you, he uses language in a way that annuls language or linguicity. And in that way, it's a strong vaccine against anyone that wants to talk about him as if he exists, as if he is a person with any kind of character or any kind of responsibility, any kind of intent, any kind of almost any kind of pattern related to him, because the linguistic loophole that he uses is the one that claims that he is not a person. I am not a person. You are not a person. There's no person. It just seems that way because there's only one, and there's only what is right here, right now. So when you do that, how can you talk about the person called Tony Parsons? But I'm gonna sin against this sacred message and try to talk of my experience to the extent that I exist with trying to get positively influenced from his teaching. I think, well, it was one of my first influences, and I think it's a gorgeous, gorgeous message. It's like a work of art in the way that you just go in there to his into his way of expression, And I would present it as a work of art, I think, because it makes you gasp at your own brain's limitation to understand the nature of being. And the message is so it takes the brain so much, sufficiently, so beautifully apart, the human brain that always tries to divide things to objects and then understand them. It it attacks that so beautifully that it's just amazing and gorgeous. And I think gorgeous is something that Tony Parsons it's a word that he uses a lot, and I can see why, because truly he found a way to dismantle, that's the word, dismantle the brain, the mind from all its weapons and just leave it gasping, like like amazed at its own limitations. And that is, it's beautiful, it's very attractive to someone that's seeking resolve to his very much agitated and wandering mind. And it's a kind of trick, but do I think that Tony Parsons is trying to trick us? Is he not authentic, an authentic person? Well, he would say he's not a person at all. So then everything that I say after that, trying to relay any kind of morality or non-morality or lack of morality to that phenomenon that we call Tony Parsons, he would say, any kind of attempt to say anything about his intent would be immaterial, would be impossible in his own way of thinking. But I'm not Tony Parsons. So I'm saying, I'm trying to think, what do I feel about what he intends? Is it because there's a lot of a kind of untouchable nature to his message and the way he shows up. It's not that he's not personally accessible. He looks, he shows up mostly very kindly, but then he doesn't relate much to people's emotions, fears, worries about getting there, getting to know what he knows. He just lays again and again that message upon them in the very a certain kind of linguistic manner. So there's something impersonal in his way of delivery, and it comes off sometimes frustrating to the listener, and sometimes it can come off or interpreted as arrogant. And I certainly interpreted him quite a few times as that, as being arrogant and uncompassionate. But then how can he be? Because it's not a person the way he describes it. There's no person, nobody is arrogant. But then I think there is arrogance. There is the phenomena of arrogance. We can't, well, I go there later, but what is my intuition if there is a me or there is something here that is like crystallized to a certain way of perception, which I think there is. So this body-mind complex, myself, intuits that body-mind complex, Tony Parsons, doesn't mean bad Doesn't, he means well. I think he's authentic. I think at least he had a very profound realization and ongoing realization about the oneness, non-dual nature of things, about the fact that there is only one and that all there is this, the way he expresses it. And if he doesn't experience that all the time, he got very convinced that that is the nature of reality through a personal experience. And he describes it also as an energetic process, which I appreciate deeply, because that distinction made it very clear to me that everything is included in the perception of oneness, including the body and the energetic system. It's not only about the mind. And that there's a kind of, the way he describes it, a contraction in the energetic system that makes us perceive things as we do. And the lack of this contraction makes him perceive things as he does. And I believe he went through an energetic shift. And it was at least an energetic experience that he got very much convinced by that experience, the way that you might have a life-changing experience, and then you can have insights that last with you for a lifetime. Does he experience that energetic change all the time? Maybe. I'm not sure. Because I saw him in tens of situations, sessions he gave, interviews, and not in all those interviews he seems in the same state. So this is I'm not sure it's constant for him, but I do think he's mainly mostly authentic, and I do think there might be some still unconscious mechanisms working within this person. So as to his message about there isn't a person, there's just this, okay? The way Tony offers this idea is that it's not an idea, he would say it's the way things are. He includes a duality within non-duality, but he makes it like a kind of appearance or illusion. Like he doesn't say, you're not perceiving people, but he says, there's only this, what's happening right here, right now. There's no distinctions in this, but there seems to be, apparently, people and stuff and object appearing as this, but it's only this, it's not people, right? So he rejects everything the mind, every distinction the mind is making. He does admit, at least lately in talks that I saw from the last couple of years, he does admit that there is the concept of patterns that exist as people, in people. And he He even mentioned DNA as influencing those personality patterns. He talks about personality is something that is mainly born. So it doesn't matter if it's born or influenced from outside, but it exists for him. But then it's just an appearance. And that is the way. So he doesn't totally deny, because it would be crazy. Nobody would listen to him if he would totally deny the appearance of patterns and beings, everything we see. But he says it's just apparently happening. And the truth is that all there is this. So that is his way of partially integrating what we see, the way we experience the world and ourselves, with another kind of perception. But what he says is that there's only one perception, which is the truth, and one perception which is appearance. Duality is just an appearance. Actually, it doesn't exist at all. Everything that you see is just an appearance. He doesn't explain it. He just says that all there is this, and he doesn't explain it. He says it's oneness, whatever it is that is this, and it is all there is oneness. And I tend to agree, but then he actually, I think, introduces two kinds of, at least, of realities, but he doesn't admit it. It's not that there's two realities. It's not that there's two perceptions. It's that there is truth of oneness and there is a perception. What's appearing? Appearance. So basically, everything that you can say about someone having a personality, if you want to damn someone for being this and that, like for being arrogant, for example, or for being a thief, or for being wicked, you cannot do that because there's no one there. And I tend to agree. But then let's take like some distance from this and look at cats, It's known that cats have a very distinct personality from one another. And I have in my backyard 6 cats that I take care of. Every one of them is totally different. And some of them changed over the years and some of them didn't, but they are capable of changing. I'm not saying it's by their own will, but there is a change. So what is that? When I say they have a personality, what is it about cats, those cats that I say? One is like very, likes a lot of petting and is very warm and communicative. One is very cautious and anxious, and one is a kind of, sometimes he's very, very cute, but sometimes he's very aggressive to the other cats, and he really likes eating and is fat as a whale. So they all have those patterns so why not say, what I'm asking is, why not say that this conglomeration of patterns is someone, is a personality. And when I say the same thing about a human, what's the problem with saying that this person, there's a person there, you know, and he has a character, and there are patterns there that tend to repeat themselves. But then there's also a possible learning process and transformational potential where this pattern can change. So then we can say this person had these patterns, and now those patterns change or soften up, or they transformed, and now he's a different person. So what's the problem with that? Well, there is a problem because then you exclude altogether the other side of the equation, which is oneness, which is the deeper truth about personality patterns being inborn, being given to us from birth or from the environment when we develop. It excludes the deeper knowledge, the wiser knowledge about how personality is created not by our own volition. So it excludes the fact that volition plays a very, very, very minor part in our behavior. It's especially true about cats that don't have a neocortex and don't have rational thinking, right? So because human beings have rational thinking, they came to attribute to other people rational behavior, and that's a mistake. That's a mistake that is very superficial way of thinking that has to be corrected. So in that way, that message of Tony Parsons is really conducive to taking care of that mistake, because there has been a mistake in humanity, I think, that they thought the whole thing about morality was that people thought that because we have a rational mind, humanity can act rationally. But no, we took too much of a step away from being an animal because we thought, okay, now I have rationality, now I can control myself. But it's not true. The inborn or environmentally influenced patterns still rule the scene. We're still kind of cats. We're still a kind of a cat. We still have each our own given character, which is inborn. And it's a long way to go from having a rational aspect to our being to thinking this is the whole story, and it makes us capable of controlling our animal character, our inborn traits. It's not necessarily animalistic, you know, but it's born like in the cats. So every cat has a personality, and then we can look at that body with that personality, Tony, and we can say that is a cat. It's not only it's not useful for many, many things to say it's just an appearance with a pattern, okay? Because I think what Tony is trying to point at is the lack of volition, and that has deep truth to it. Because a lot of the things we humans think we control is actually, it belongs to existence, to the oneness that moves us through mostly our inborn character, partially our unconscious drives, and slightly sometimes our rationality. But it's still not someone. It's not that there is an identity, a separate identity in this cat and in this cat and in this different cat. There's an identity. When I call this cat like noisy and this cat looky, it's not that I believe there's a different identity there, but certainly there is a different character there, that there is a cluster, yeah, of traits, of patterns, of ways of seeing the world even, that belongs to noisy, and one cluster of the same things that belong to looking, and they are different. They differentiate them. They make each unique, and the same goes for humans. But the mistake that we make is thinking, one, that if a human is rational, that they can override their basic patterns that are inborn, that they control themselves with rationality. They don't. This is one mistake. But the truth is integrative, that wise human, a human that can control themselves, is a developed human, is a human that came to awareness about all their patterns and integrated it with his rational thinking and awareness, and then they are more informed about the reason that they do things, and then they can act more wisely. So it's just maturity. But who does that? Who matures? Who develops? Nobody. Even that it doesn't depend on the human. So volition, rationality and volition, we can really go astray with beliefs about those things, about volition and about rationality. So those are the mistakes that people tend to make about what it is to be a human being, and what is a personality, and what is identity. And I think what actually Tony Parsons is trying to say is that there isn't only one identity. Eventually, identity, there is only one. Personality, well, he tends to throw that to the wayside and focus about identity. And I think it kind of corrects that error. I can't do with those R's. Error. It makes a correction to the other side of the scale, but it overslants the scale, I think, because then it disables any kind of discussion about life, whatever you see in life, because you can't make any distinctions about any kind of pattern, because he makes it like very unimportant. And it is in a way unimportant when you come from a purely spiritual oneness perspective place. But then it doesn't leave the person that most spiritual seekers still have in them patterns of thinking that consider themselves to be someone and very much slanted to the side of separate self-identity, which you can call the ego. So most spiritual seekers are still under the influence of a deep influence of separate self-identity. And when you come to this kind of teacher, he doesn't give the separate self any kind of action steps or guidance or ways that he can devote itself to evolution of perception, spiritual development, whatever you want to call it. So you're left with the kind of like, he awakens, Tony Parsons, your inner intuition about identity being only one, but then you're left with a pattern of ego that is used to acting in the world as if you have a separate self-identity. Actually, the ego is there because most of human society is built around that perception of separate self-identity, that it's not only that we're like cats, that we have our personality, but that we have a separate identity. And therefore, it's very important if we win or lose, succeed or fail, that we're loved or unloved, everything becomes very, very important when you think you're a separate identity, not only a personality. And that's the way human society is built. So when you take this kind of pattern, social pattern, conditioning, social conditioning, and you clash it with that very puristic message of Tony Parsons, it's very difficult to find places where they meet because he doesn't build a bridge. He doesn't want to build a bridge. He's not interested because all this perception for him is null and void, and that is actually what makes me doubt that he's really, really experiencing this perception of non-duality to the full all the time. Because something is lacking in compassion, in that kind of behavior or that kind of way of carrying himself as a spiritual teacher, that he seems uninterested in other people's pain or suffering around not understanding how to get from here to there. Everything that his students ask him is actually around, okay, I really envy you because you don't seem disturbed about life and about a separate identity. It's very painful and heavy to carry a sense of separate identity in a way. So how can you help me? And then he goes again to this linguistic trap of I cannot help you because you do not exist. because there isn't me. I'm not a teacher, you're not a student. And it goes back again and again to that linguistic, I would call it trap, that doesn't enable him to offer help to his fellow humans. And I'm gonna pause here and come back for a sec. Okay, so to sum it up, I think the reason that Tony Parsons has clients, one of them, like me, is that a big part of human suffering is the experience of a separate self. There is not only pain that is contained in life, like if you take a cat, they don't have the mental equipment that we have that makes it believe they are a personal individual with volition, no matter how much volition, how strong. They don't have that perception. They just exist. They have being. And in the being of a cat, it can have more pain in life or less pain. That's all. But they don't make too much of it because they're cats, and whatever happens, happens to them without making it a story about poor me. And then, sorry, I'm just cold. And then with a human, it's different. It's kind of, we have that narrative-based sense of identity, of separate identity. And we do make a lot of everything that happens to us. It becomes the center of our existence, that narrative, that story of the one that wins life, and it becomes the center of our identity. And then if life doesn't go the way that we plan or that we want, we find it hard to let go. We find it hard to surrender to life. And that makes even more suffering. So for me, all the thing about spiritual development or personal development, it's all about suffering. It's all about reducing suffering. And I'm gonna say something comment about that briefly in a moment, but the message, the reason Tony Parsons has clients is that this message about identity, personal separate identity being a mistake in perception, is very attractive because we suffer so much from that perception and we get trapped in that perception. It's a kind of trap. It's hard to get out of this trap. It becomes patterns of behaviors and patterns. It gets ingrained into our whole system, also energetically, as Tony indicates so generously. And it gets to be a whole experience that is contracted. It's unpleasant. And once you get to get out of that, experience. It's a great relief, and we intuit that there is someone there, one moment, that quite simply, that Tony, whatever he is, is someone that broke out of that illusion of self-separate identity, and it's so attractive. We want to be that, but we don't want to, we find it hard to let go of our own sense of identity because it's so ingrained in us. So that's the reason, the point of attraction to that kind of message. And I think it does a good job, and it's good that it's there. But then what this message in its very extremity is doing is it's a linguistic trap of its own. It makes it as though it's either this or that, and there's no bridge in the middle. And that one, like oneness identity, it annuls the separate self, and there is no place anymore for the separate self. So he just says, it appears to be so. And there's nothing you can do because there's no you. And it's just, it makes the liberation limiting and unhelpful. And I wanted to comment on that for a moment because I want to say, if you think that you want liberation, then I don't believe you, because everything about being a human, as far as I can tell, is about wanting relief, wanting something. And liberation is nothing and everything, as Tony points out a lot. It's not about something. Both nothing and everything is not something. And a human being, when we seek for something, when we're attracted to something, it takes quite a while, and it takes quite a lot of experience to gradually let go of wanting something and succumbing to nothing and everything. Because everything that we are about, humans, is about looking for well-being. It's natural. It's our nature. It's just our nature, One of the traits of a human being is that they have 2 feet and 2 hands, unless one of them was cut off for one reason, 1 heart, 1 brain, and they they want well-being. It's just, we breathe and we want well-being. It's just, if you think about it honestly, how basic it is for you as a human being in everything you do, everything you look for, all your endeavors, all your exploration, from ever since you were a tiny baby up till today, almost everything is about well-being. The only way to make a human that doesn't want well-being, and well-being has a lot of aspects to it. It can be expressed as higher aspects like love, like justice, even even stoic philosophy that is about don't look for outer well-being in the world, but just aim at virtue. Virtue is its own reward. I agree. It's a higher level philosophy that went away from seeking material reward because of the understanding and the experience of no material or no experience or no material reward lasts. And you get disappointed eventually from clinging to that. Okay, it's very developed. But then, sorry, the philosophy still looks for, okay, so where does well-being resides? Where can I aim after understanding that? Where can I aim at to live a life of well-being? And then they point you to inner virtue. So it's another step towards well-being where you let go of outer rewards and you look for inner rewards, just knowing that you're a good person, just knowing that you're a wise person, just knowing that you have some kind of self-control, temperance, the virtue of temperance, holding on to that. So the human being has a separate self-identity. It's the way we develop in society. I don't know of a person that doesn't have that to an extent, and this separate self-identity looks for well-being, okay? So it's very attractive because it's very polarized to come with a message like Tony Parsons and say, and it's good that there's this message, and he says, there's no person, so there's no use in looking for well-being because you don't exist. You basically, it just seems that you exist. Actually, there's only one identity, and well-being, not well-being, it doesn't matter. It's not, it has no meaning. There's no meaning, he says. In a way, it's true, but it's not true from the human perspective, from the very natural, very common, widely common human experience. So who are you teaching? Because regretfully, I had to admit after coming across and contemplating and being influenced from Tony Parsons' teaching, I had to lower my head, bow my head, and admit to myself, I'm human. I'm human. I have a sense of separate self, and I need some kind of direction. I need some kind of guidance. I cannot work with this. So if you think you're not looking for well-being, you're kidding yourself. And I think the question arises, who Tony Parsons directs his teaching to, and he would say nobody. And he would be right in a way, but I don't want to judge, but I feel like there's something maybe lacking in that. And also it's wonderful that there is this, at the same time that there is this teaching. So I want to go over to Thomas Keating and why I feel that he has everything that if you really listen to him, if you don't have to make an effort, but just really listen to what he's saying, he has all of Tony Parsons inside him. as well as more. And the more is an ability and a willingness to build a bridge, to give that separate self, ego, something to do, while telling it the truth that it doesn't depend on it. And I think the bridge is about devotion to the spiritual path, to that state of oneness, while letting go of any volition except one intention, gradually coming to purification of intention that becomes more and more purely directed at just letting go, just succumbing to life, to the way that I am, to my patterns, and to divinity, and letting it lead us on our way to oneness perception, however much time it takes. I think what can be said to connect the two teachers, well, it's not only one thing. One thing I can speak to or think about is the concept of mystery. Tony Parsons definitely says that the human mind cannot get how oneness functions in the world and appears in the world and why it is doing so, and it's a mystery. And I believe him that he experiences to be that way, and he points it in a very beautiful way. He points at it in a very beautiful way, that this appearance, me like seeming to be a body sitting here in front of you, and this apparent separation is a mystery. It's something that he says just is happening, and it's happening all the time. There's no past, there's no future. It's just happening. And it's a mystery. And that is something that I feel that the two teachers meet on, because also Thomas Keating points at a mystery, and I feel that he points at the same mystery. And what Thomas Keating says is that we cannot mentally understand the way that God functions, and appears in the world, but that it is a fact that God appears as the world. He has the Trinity model to kind of point at it, that it's a kind of, it's not only oneness, but it's a kind of system that is, it contains different aspects that are at the same time one, but it's a paradox that is hard to mentally understand. And that secret, that mystery, can only be conveyed to a human being, not mentally, but in silence. And that we can like connect to divinity, to God, to the mind of God, but it's not a mental connection. It's not like mental understanding. It can't be mentally understood. And this is something that I find is connects the two teachers, and it connects a lot of spiritual teachings that eventually talk about the basic reality of existence being a mystery. So pointing at the fact that we cannot understand it mentally is important. And I believe that's true. So there's no use when you say that, it's pointing at the fact that there's no use in going too much deeply into mental exploration. Now, if you're a mentally oriented person, you won't be able to stop yourself, but at least you know it's not there. So you can go on that tangent, but at least you know it's just beyond, you can't stop yourself, but it's not something that's leading to true mystical experience or mystical life. And that's important, and that's something that the two teachers do. But one thing that Thomas Keating offers is a kind of practice that, if it helps or not, I can't attest to. I've been practicing his practice, centering prayer, for about 2.5 years. And if there's a change, it's very gradual. And he says it's good that it's gradual, because otherwise the seeker can be so-called fried. And I agree that gradual is good. But it's so gradual, it's hard to pinpoint. And but it's a wise path. There's two practices that Thomas Keating, in his wisdom, while he was alive, he's not anymore, graciously offered his followers. One is what it's called centering prayer, which leads to the contemplative state, which is a kind of I don't know how to call it. It has another name in the Hindu tradition, but it's state of realization, of constant contact with that oneness realization. So there's the practice, and it points to a state. And the practice, by what it's saying, can take like decades of a human's life. But it doesn't matter, because it gives you a kind of anchor of silence in your life, and also a process of it includes in it a process of mental emotional purification that by itself has a lot of value, because it has a transformative element to it that changes you as a person and makes you more peaceful and more patient to people, and changes your mental emotional patterns. So it gives you a kind of experience that you're doing something. There's something that you can do. You can sit twice a day for 20 minutes and meditate, and it has an impact on your personal life. And there's also the practice of welcoming prayer, which is also wonderful, because I can attest that there are many psychological, therapeutic, psychotherapy modalities that are totally based on welcoming. And this practice that it offered for the everyday is actually the same thing. A practice of welcoming is just a practice that calibrates the mental emotional system to be used to surrendering. It's a surrendered path. It's a surrendered way of being that is also today cultivated in many, many psychotherapeutic modalities, like IFS, like focusing, like many modalities that work to some extent or another on a surrendered way of being, an integrative surrendered way of being. And this welcoming prayer practice is just wonderful. It's so, I have a video on it. If you want, I can link below. So what Thomas Keating offers to the seeker is just a path. And it's a good path because it's a path that creates a dynamic in the system of integration. It creates a dynamic in the system of introducing more and more awareness to the human being, more integration, more shadow work, opening up. And another thing that Thomas Keating doesn't do, he doesn't brush off by his own example that he gives. He integrates into his method and the explanations of his method. He integrates a lot of knowledge of current knowledge, like Ken Wilber's work and psychological knowledge, and he appears as very knowledgeable in those areas, which inspires in a person permission to explore in different direction and integrate into their own life path different influences and different practices, which he very much encourages. So in that way, he's different from Tony Parsons because he doesn't put you in a kind of limitation or limiting trap that you cannot do anything because you don't exist, which is probably true. And he does point to that. He does hint to that as well. He does not only hint, he includes it in his teaching that eventually the change in perspective to oneness being to existing in oneness perception is possible, but is a matter of grace, is a matter of grace. So what does it mean it's a matter of grace? It means it doesn't depend on us. It can happen to anyone, anytime, which is what Tony Parsons says. So it's the same thing, isn't it? Yes, it is. Because from the vantage point of oneness, nobody's doing anything, and anything that you are doing won't change anything because oneness is the only thing that there is. And Thomas Keating is well aware of that. It's very clear he's aware of that. But at the same time, he doesn't trap you in a language trap where he tells you oneness is all there is, so quit being a person, or it doesn't matter whatever you do, you cannot get from here to there because there's no here and no there because everything is oneness, which is true. But there seems to not be oneness, right? There seems to be a me, contracted me here. So what can I do? I can sit in meditation twice a day. And this will start to work on the energetic aspect of being so contracted. If you sit twice a day, and maybe at the beginning you're very not at ease and very you think a lot of thoughts, eventually this will start in a year, in 2 years, in 10 years, will start to make you less contracted. And the same thing goes for the practice of welcoming. If you start welcoming, it will push forward your ability to let go, right? Because you're welcoming your sensations, your feelings, your thoughts. This is a wonderful practice. So it's effective. Otherwise, people that make a lot of money from helping people mentally wouldn't use this practice of mindfulness, of welcoming, of whatever it's called, focusing. It's the same thing. It's a welcoming practice. So it's effective. Otherwise, people wouldn't make money out of teaching people that in clinic. So he gives whatever is effective to calm down the personality and start an integrative practice that will also enable a person to start to do some shadow work. And he introduces it in such a laid back, relaxed way. His delivery is very precise, but very relaxed. So you feel like very held by his confidence. And it's really helpful. And it seems really clear that he knows that if you're going to make the shift to oneness perception, one, it's not up to you. It depends on grace, because his language is religion, is religious. And he also is aware by what he's saying that it might not exclude pain from your life, because he talks about how having oneness perception is not a recipe to get rid of all kinds of suffering. He calls it suffering, but I'm sure he means pain, because I'm very into the distinction between suffering and pain. So he admits that it's not about living as in a oneness perception, may be easier in some sense, but then it can still be hard, because life can still throw things at you. You still can have challenges, real challenges. Your life can be still challenging. But he doesn't shy away of saying your life, you know? So for me, that's the difference, that he seems to be able to, how does Ken Wilber say it in Inspired Dynamics? Transcend and include. Oneness perception is not separate self perception. It's not that. It's different. So in one way, it's polarized to it's the complete opposite of it, because in oneness there is no you, and in separation there is. But then if you're truly one, why do you care about people like not about people, but why does it matter to you if people feel that they're not one? How does it bother you? I think it doesn't. And if you feel compassion, you will go to them where they are, which is they feel they are a separate ego, you know? You will go to them not only by giving them lectures like Tony Parsons does, but you will really, really see things the way they are and tell them, okay, I see things differently, so I gotta level with you. I can't level with you. We're not on the same level. Another thing is you cannot jump from your level to mine. Here's a ladder. Here's a ladder. So you don't have to, you don't have to jump. You can't jump. But why don't you put your foot on this step? So the person who had um, the bad luck, sorry, to have some kind of spiritual attraction and come across a spiritual teacher and hear the true message of oneness. This person has a lot of bad luck in a way. It's actually good luck, but it's kind of excruciating because the truth is so far away when expressed when pointed to by language. It's so far away from the regular common Joe, common day experience of separate self. It's so far. So you have the good luck and the bad luck to come across a real spiritual teacher. And then what? You're in trouble because you get to sense and hear and witness the truth from another teacher reflecting it to you, but you cannot change yourself. You cannot change yourself. You cannot jump over to their own side. So just sitting with you and telling you about the truth is one side of it, but then what can I do about the trouble you find yourself in? And the truth is, it's like, I think it's like, I think of it these days like it's a kind of you sit in that liquid of awakening until it permeates you enough that you get persuaded in a way. You get persuaded. You get to be one with that liquid. Like think about it like you are something white, but it's permeable and they put you, it's like a gel or something person. They put you inside red liquid, and the red liquid is oneness perception. And the teacher is like the thing that transmits or is a vessel of putting you inside that red liquid. So it can be one teacher, it can be 10 teachers, it doesn't matter, but you sit in that oneness liquid, and the moment that you got into it, it's very hard to get out. And even if you get out for a while, it's still on you, on your surface. So you're not white anymore. You're reddish, pinkish. And it starts to permeate you, even though you got out of the liquid. And then you start missing it. you start thinking you felt better while you were in the liquid, and then something happens in your life and it just throws you back into the red liquid because you think you felt better there, it felt lighter, so you go back into the red liquid and you sit there. You say, okay, do your worst on me, and you sit there and it permeates you a bit more, and then you get freaked out. At least that's the way it is for me. And you jump out, and you jump in and out and in and out until it's about 50% or a bit more of you, that reddish, it permeates you enough that you get a bit more persuaded. Yeah. But you still, it's not all the way through. So you're really torn between the part of you that's red and the part of you that's white. And the white is the ego and the red is oneness. And it gets really, really polarized. And it's really like, it's really excruciating because you don't know who you are and you vacillate between the two. So when a teacher comes across a student in that state, what do? They still like just let them sit there suffering? Or do they offer them a method, something to practice? Here, you have an ego. Good, let's give it a job. Let's give it a job. The ego already knows he's on the way out. He already knows he the the powers have turned, that the control has shifted, and now something else is leading, but he's still fighting for its life. And it's still like the ego is a tool for doing separate self, doing. I am doing in the world. Who am I supposed to be? So would you give it something to do? Or would you just leave it like trembling? Of course, you would give it something to do. It's the compassionate thing to do because it relaxes it. It relaxes it. You would say to it, it's okay, you have a role in this. Why don't you practice twice a day? Why don't you practice once in an hour and do welcoming prayer? And the ego tries it and it goes like, oh, that's so much better. I feel like I'm relaxed. I know what to do now. It doesn't hurt. It's not lying to it. It's just you have a devotional ego now. What's wrong with that? Nothing is wrong with that. Until the last stages that might come 10 years from now, 20 years from now, where the ego just maybe drops away, maybe even diminishes this job, go on retirement and just watches from the wayside. No, until the ego is convinced that it can trust the new owner. This is a very fourth way approach. I had a fourth way chapter. So until the ego is convinced, okay, there's an owner and everything is okay, we're better off, everything, the whole system is less contracted, I'm needed less. And if you need me, just holler. And then if you get like a kind of a moment in your life when someone is playing rough with you, you can say, ego, come. And it comes and makes its show. Who are you talking to? Are you talking to me? Who are you talking? Who do you think you're talking to? And then it takes a bow and goes back to the backstage. And that's it. That's what the ego is good for. Protection. Protection in a world of egos. So, to sum it up, I don't want to sum it up. I said some things about, and I don't have to sum up, do I? Because eventually we can always stay with saying it's a mystery. How is it that there are teachers like Tony Parsons and there are teachers like Thomas Keating? For me, Thomas Keating agrees with me more these days. Sometimes, the way I can sum it up is sometimes the right lie is truer than the true truth. And I'm going to explain, but I'm going to repeat it first. Sometimes the right lie at the right time is better and truer than the true truth. So I'm not saying that Thomas Keating is lying, but he does introduce a complex, integrated, a bit mysterious approach to spiritual growth, development. So when you have a limited perception, a limited approach is needed. And coming across an unlimited, totally open, totally unstructured teacher and teaching can actually be a stumbling block for you. It can frustrate you, it can unstabilize you, it can not contribute to the place that you're in. So in that way, the limited truth, the lie, is better for you when you are limited than the truest truth. So that is a paradox of the spiritual path. A paradox that sometimes when I listen to Thomas Keating and when I look at him and I see the glance in the corner of his eye, I seem to get that he gets, that he's compassionate enough to give me the truest lie for me, that he gives me the one step on the ladder that he lowered for me and gives me the benefit of thinking that I'm the one that's stepping the step on the ladder, while at the same time saying to me, darling, you're not the one stepping. Yeah, that feels like complete. Thank you.